What happens when a racist restaurant manager threatens to remove the wrong black woman, thinking she won't push back against his blatant discrimination until she picks up the phone and calls the owner? You won't believe the manager's reaction. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe. The restaurant buzzed with quiet energy, the kind that marked the start of a busy evening. Soft classical music played in the background, blending with the gentle clink of glasses and silverware. Alicia Carter sat near the center of the dining room, her table set with a crisp white tablecloth and polished utensils. She had arrived precisely on time, as was her habit, her confident presence fitting seamlessly into the refined atmosphere. The staff moved efficiently around her, welcoming new patrons and guiding them to their seats. Alicia noticed a couple being led to their table, a pair who had walked in moments ago, clearly without a reservation. She glanced down at her menu, but made a mental note. "Everything all right, ma'am?" the waiter asked, stopping briefly as he refilled her water. Alicia nodded, offering a polite smile. "Just waiting on my meal, thank you." She settled back into her chair, scanning the room. The other diners seemed engrossed in their own conversations, a mix of business professionals and couples enjoying a night out. She relished these moments of quiet observation, finding beauty in the rhythm of life around her. Near the entrance, the restaurant manager, Michael Turner, stood with his arms crossed. His sharp suit as pressed and pristine as his expression was stern. He tapped his earpiece, listening intently to someone on the other end of the line. Whatever he heard made his posture straighten. A server approached him with a questioning look, and Michael leaned in, lowering his voice. "They're on their way. We need to be ready." His eyes scanned the dining room, lingering on Alicia's table. A faint frown creased his face, his gaze flickering to the open reservation list in his hand. He motioned for the waiter to step closer. "Table 7, Michael said quietly, nodding in Alicia's direction. "We might need to clear it. Keep it on standby." The waiter hesitated. "But, sir, she's already seated," and Michael cut him off with a wave of his hand. "Just do it. I'll handle it." Unaware of the exchange, Alicia adjusted her napkin and glanced at her phone. The hum of conversation continued around her, but Michael's sharp eyes remained fixed on her table, calculating his next move. The calm hum of the restaurant persisted as Alicia sat, unaware of the storm brewing near the entrance. She traced her finger along the menu, debating between two dishes, while the waiter returned to Michael's side. "She's still there," the waiter said hesitantly, glancing toward Alicia's table. Michael's face hardened. "Fine. I'll deal with it." He straightened his jacket, his sharp movements betraying his annoyance. As he strode across the room, Alicia noticed him approaching. She set her menu down, her gaze steady as he stopped at her table. "Good evening," he began, his smile thin and brittle. "I'm Michael Turner, the manager here. I'm afraid we have a situation." Alicia tilted her head slightly. "What kind of situation?" Michael clasped his hands in front of him, his tone measured. "A very important guest will be arriving shortly, and we'll need to make some adjustments to our seating arrangements. Unfortunately, that means I'll need to ask you to vacate this table." Alicia raised an eyebrow. "Vacate? Why? I have a reservation, and I was seated on time." Michael's smile tightened. "I understand, but as I said, this is an exceptional circumstance. I trust you'll be understanding about the needs of the restaurant." She leaned back in her chair, her expression calm but firm. "I don't understand, actually. Why not ask someone else to move? There are at least 3 tables that were seated after me." Michael's expression faltered briefly, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Ma'am, I'm asking you because this is a business decision. We need to maintain a certain ambiance for tonight's special guests." "Ambiance?" Alicia repeated, her tone sharpening. "And my presence ruins that for you?" His mask of professionalism slipped further. "Look," he said, his voice low but clipped. "This is not personal. I'm offering you a chance to handle this gracefully. Don't make it harder than it needs to be." Alicia sat up straighter, her gaze narrowing. "Are you threatening me?" Michael exhaled sharply, glancing around to ensure no one else could hear. "I'm simply saying that if you don't cooperate, I'll have to involve security. I'd hate for things to escalate unnecessarily. Alicia froze for a moment, then smiled coolly. Escalate? Yes, he said with more confidence now. This doesn't have to be unpleasant. But if you insist on making a scene, I will act in the best interest of this establishment. She let his words hang in the air, studying him intently. Then, with deliberate calm, she folded her napkin and placed it on the table. I see. So, your solution is to intimidate paying customers to accommodate special guests. Is that it? Michael's jaw tightened, his voice dropping further. You're not the first person I've had to deal with like this. I can make this as easy or as difficult as you want. Alicia's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. She stayed seated, her calm composure now laced with steel. I think I'll stay right here for now. His nostrils flared, and he straightened up, clearly frustrated. Fine, I'll give you 5 minutes to reconsider before I return with security. He turned abruptly and walked away, leaving Alicia to sit amidst the hushed murmurs of nearby diners who had overheard snippets of the exchange. Alicia took a deep breath, steadying herself. She glanced toward Michael, who was now speaking to a pair of staff members, his gestures animated and his expression tense. She didn't know what his next move would be, but one thing was certain. This wasn't over. Alicia's fingers grazed the edge of the table as she sat still, her thoughts racing. The anger simmering beneath her calm exterior was tempered by experience. This wasn't her first encounter with someone like Michael Turner. He was the type who thought his position gave him the right to decide who mattered and who didn't. Her eyes drifted to the other patrons. Some were engrossed in their conversations, oblivious, while others cast curious glances in her direction. She caught snippets of hushed murmurs, questions about what was happening, followed by awkward silence when they realized she had noticed them. She closed her eyes briefly, letting out a slow, steady breath. This wasn't just about her. She could feel it in her bones. People like Michael didn't stop at one person. How many others had he humiliated like this? How many had been quietly pushed out, forced to leave without a fuss? The click of polished shoes brought her attention back. Michael was returning, this time flanked by 2 uniformed security guards. His expression was colder now, his earlier mask of civility replaced by impatience. "Ma'am," he began sharply, his tone leaving no room for pretense, "I warned you about this." Alicia remained seated, her calm gaze fixed on him. "Warned me about what exactly?" Michael folded his arms. "Your refusal to cooperate. I've asked you politely to vacate this table. And now you're disrupting the restaurant's operation. This is unacceptable." The 2 guards stood behind him, their presence an unspoken threat. Alicia felt their eyes on her, waiting for her to resist, to give them an excuse to act. "And again," Alicia said, her voice steady, "you haven't explained why it's me you're asking to leave. There are plenty of other diners here, some who arrived after me. Why not them?" Michael's lips pressed into a thin line. But then he said it. The words she had been expecting. "Because this establishment caters to a certain clientele, and I'm afraid you don't exactly fit the image we're trying to uphold tonight." Alicia's breath caught for a moment. There it was, laid bare. No innuendos, no veiled excuses, just the raw, ugly truth. "Say that again," she said, her voice low. Michael's eyes darted around, suddenly realizing the weight of his words. He shifted uncomfortably, but doubled down. "We have a responsibility to maintain a high standard here, and frankly, I don't believe you align with that standard." She stood slowly, her movements deliberate. Her height didn't match his, but her presence loomed far larger. The guards behind Michael tensed, but she made no move to resist. Instead, she adjusted her dress and reached for her bag. "You think you can do this," she said softly, almost to herself. Then her voice grew firmer, enough to make Michael flinch. "You think you can treat people like this and get away with it?" "I've made my position clear," he replied stiffly. "Now, if you'd kindly step aside, we can resolve this without any further issues." Alicia looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, with a calmness that belied the storm inside her, she pulled her phone from her bag. "Wait," she said, holding up a finger. "Before you have security escort me out, I just need to make a phone call. Michael's brow furrowed in confusion, his confidence wavering as she turned slightly away, already dialing. Michael crossed his arms as Alicia raised her phone to her ear, his expression a mix of annoyance and disbelief. The security guards exchanged glances, unsure whether to intervene or wait for further instructions. "Go ahead and make your call," Michael said dismissively, his tone dripping with condescension. "I'm sure whoever you're calling will understand the situation perfectly." Alicia didn't respond. She stepped a few paces away, her voice low but firm as she spoke into the phone. Michael shifted his weight impatiently, his earlier smugness faltering slightly as he watched her. "Sir, do you want us to move her out now?" one of the guards asked. "Not yet," Michael replied sharply, his eyes narrowing as Alicia continued speaking. "Let her finish whatever this is first. Then we'll handle it." The restaurant buzzed softly in the background, but an air of unease had settled over the nearby tables. A few patrons were watching openly now, their curiosity piqued by the growing tension. Alicia's call ended, and she turned back to face Michael. She slid her phone into her bag, her expression composed but resolute. "You're going to regret this," she said simply, her voice steady. Michael raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smirk returning to his face. "Oh, really? And why is that?" "Because I just spoke to the owner of this restaurant," Alicia replied evenly. The words hit Michael like a slap, but he recovered quickly, laughing derisively. "You spoke to the owner? Right. Let me guess. He's going to storm in here and save the day?" Alicia didn't flinch. "That's exactly what's going to happen." Michael's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, but he shook his head. "Ma'am, I don't know who you think you spoke to, but I can assure you I'm in direct contact with the owner. I think I'd know if they were coming here tonight." "You're about to find out," Alicia said calmly, folding her arms. Michael turned to the guards, gesturing dismissively. "This is ridiculous. Escort her out." "Now." The guards hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. "Sir, if she really did call the owner," one of them began. Michael cut him off with a sharp glare. "She didn't. It's a bluff. Just do your job." Before they could take another step, Alicia held up her hand. "If you touch me, it'll be the last mistake you make in this restaurant." The quiet authority in her voice made even the guards pause. Michael stepped closer, his temper flaring. "Listen," he hissed, keeping his voice low. "I don't care who you think you know. I run this place, and I say you're done here. So either leave quietly, or I'll have you dragged out." Alicia's calm gaze didn't waver. "You don't run anything, Michael, and if you're so confident, why don't you stay put for just a few more minutes? I'm sure you'll enjoy what happens next." Michael scoffed, but his confidence was starting to waver. His hands tightened into fists at his sides as he glanced around the room, realizing that more patrons were now watching. He forced a smile and turned to the guards. "Go stand by the door. I'll handle this personally." The guards reluctantly moved away, leaving Michael and Alicia standing face to face. "Enjoy your power trip while it lasts," Alicia said softly, "because when this is over, you're going to wish you had thought twice before trying to humiliate me." Michael clenched his jaw, his composure cracking. "You think a phone call is going to change anything? You're just another—" He stopped himself, but the venom in his tone was unmistakable. Alicia raised an eyebrow, letting the unfinished sentence hang in the air. "Go ahead," she said. "Finish that thought." Michael's mouth opened, then snapped shut. His confidence was eroding, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "You're wasting my time," he said instead, turning toward the foyer. Before he could take another step, the sound of a phone ringing cut through the air. Michael froze, reaching into his pocket to retrieve his device. He glanced at the screen, his face paling slightly as he recognized the number. Alicia's lips curved into a faint smile. "Go ahead. Answer it." Michael hesitated, glancing between her and the phone. His fingers hovered over the screen before he reluctantly accepted the call. "Hello?" he said, his voice suddenly subdued. The voice on the other end of the line was firm, authoritative, and unmistakably angry. Michael's eyes widened as the color drained from his face. He turned to Alicia, his mouth opening as if to speak, but no words came out. "Hold on," he stammered, gripping the phone tightly. Let me explain. Alicia crossed her arms, watching him with quiet satisfaction as he floundered. I told you, she said softly. You're going to regret this. Michael clutched his phone like a lifeline, his face pale as the voice on the other end continued speaking. The authoritative tone of James Lawson, the owner of the restaurant, carried through the faint hum of the dining room. Michael's usual smugness had evaporated, replaced by a visible sheen of sweat on his forehead. Yes, Mr. Lawson, he stammered, his voice a strained whisper. I can explain. Alicia stood a few paces away, her arms folded as she observed him with cool detachment. Patrons nearby watched with a mix of curiosity and confusion, the room quieting as Michael's body language shifted from confidence to desperation. No, sir, it's not what it looks like, Michael continued, his tone growing increasingly frantic. I was just trying to manage the situation. He glanced at Alicia, his words faltering under her calm, unyielding gaze. I didn't mean for it to come across that way. His face twisted in a grimace as James's voice grew louder, the sharp edges of anger cutting through even from a distance. Michael's free hand gestured helplessly, as though trying to physically deflect the force of the reprimand. I understand, sir, he said quickly, his words tumbling over each other. I understand completely. I'll fix it. Right now. Michael turned to Alicia, his expression now a mixture of panic and forced contrition. Ma'am, he said, his voice trembling slightly, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Please, let's discuss this. Alicia raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. A misunderstanding? She repeated, her tone icy. You mean the part where you openly admitted I don't fit the image of this restaurant? Michael winced visibly. I didn't mean it like that, he stuttered. It was poor phrasing, completely unintentional. Alicia's gaze didn't waver. So, what exactly did you mean, Michael? His mouth opened, but no words came out. The silence stretched uncomfortably, broken only by the faint buzz of James's voice still on the line. Michael brought the phone back to his ear, desperation seeping into his tone. Mr. Lawson, I swear I can handle this, he said quickly. I'll apologize. I'll make it right. James's response made Michael flinch, and he pulled the phone slightly away from his ear as though the words were physically stinging him. Of course, sir, Michael said hurriedly. Right away. He lowered the phone, swallowing hard, and turned back to Alicia. His attempt at a smile was weak and unconvincing. Miss Carter, he began, his voice unsteady, I'd like to formally apologize. My actions earlier were inappropriate and unacceptable. I hope you'll allow me to make it up to you. Alicia tilted her head, her expression unchanging. Make it up to me, she said. Tell me, Michael, how exactly do you plan to do that? Michael faltered, searching for words. I can comp your meal. Provide a future reservation. Anything you'd like. Her smile was faint, cold. Anything I'd like? Yes, absolutely, he said quickly, clinging to the hope of salvaging the situation. She took a step closer, her voice lowering just enough for him to feel the weight of her words. What I'd like, Michael, is for you to explain why you've been treating customers like this for so long. Do you think I don't know? Michael blinked, the color draining further from his face. What? No, that's not… Alicia cut him off with a raised hand. Save it. I've heard enough. And something tells me Mr. Lawson has too. Michael's phone buzzed again in his hand. He glanced at the screen and hesitated before answering. Yes, sir? This time, whatever James said left Michael frozen. His lips moved soundlessly for a moment before he finally managed a response. Understood, sir. I'll do exactly as you say. He hung up, his hand trembling slightly, and turned back to Alicia with a strained expression. The owner would like to speak with you, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, offering her the phone. Alicia took it without a word, her expression unreadable. She brought the phone to her ear, her voice steady. James, it's good to hear from you. Michael watched as Alicia spoke with the owner, his composure unraveling further with every second. He could only imagine the conversation taking place, and judging by the cool satisfaction on Alicia's face, It wasn't going in his favor. When Alicia ended the call and handed the phone back, Michael looked at her like a man waiting for the axe to fall. "What? What did he say?" he asked, his voice trembling. Alicia's smile was razor-sharp. "You'll find out soon enough." Alicia handed Michael's phone back with an air of quiet confidence. The manager stood frozen, his face pale and lips slightly parted as though waiting for someone to rescue him. She returned to her seat, smoothing her napkin over her lap, exuding an unshakable composure. "I believe I'll stay for my meal," Alicia said calmly. "After all, I do have a reservation." Michael hesitated, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. "Oh, of course," he stammered. "I'll ensure everything is perfect." "I'm sure you will," she replied, her tone sharp enough to cut through the tension. Michael retreated toward the kitchen, muttering something to the staff as he passed. The security guards, now thoroughly confused, exchanged awkward glances before stepping back to their post near the entrance. Alicia leaned back slightly, taking a sip of water as she surveyed the room. The quiet energy of the restaurant seemed to have shifted, the staff darting about with a nervous urgency. Though many of the other diners had returned to their conversations, a few continued to steal glances in her direction, curious about the unfolding drama. Before long, a ripple of excitement swept through the room. The restaurant doors opened, and an A-list celebrity walked in, their presence magnetic and undeniable. Heads turned, conversations paused, and even the waitstaff faltered in their steps. Alicia watched the commotion with mild interest, her expression unreadable. The celebrity, dressed impeccably in designer attire, scanned the room as their entourage coordinated seating arrangements. But then, something unexpected happened. The celebrity's gaze landed on Alicia, and their face lit up with recognition. Ignoring their entourage, they strode purposefully toward her table, drawing even more attention from the room. "Hey!" they exclaimed warmly, their voice cutting through the hushed murmurs. "I didn't know you were in town." Alicia stood, offering a polite smile. "It's been a while," she replied. The celebrity glanced at the empty chair across from her. "Mind if I join you?" "Not at all," Alicia said, gesturing for them to sit. The restaurant staff visibly tensed, their movements becoming even more frantic. Michael, lurking near the kitchen, froze mid-step. His face, already pale, somehow managed to drain of even more color as he watched the interaction. The celebrity leaned back casually, their charisma filling the space. "So," they began, smiling, "what's new with you? It feels like it's been forever." "Just a quiet night out," Alicia replied with a small smirk, "though it's turned out to be more eventful than I expected." The celebrity chuckled, glancing around. "Eventful? This place always seems to bring a little drama. But the food makes up for it." A waiter approached nervously, placing their drinks and meals on the table. Alicia noticed how the staff members' hands shook slightly as they set down the plates. The waiter quickly retreated, shooting a worried glance in Michael's direction. The two friends fell into easy conversation, their laughter breaking through the restaurant's subdued atmosphere. Alicia shared updates about her latest ventures, while the celebrity offered anecdotes from their recent travels and projects. Their natural camaraderie made the interaction feel effortless, drawing occasional glances from the other patrons. Meanwhile, Michael hovered in the background like a ghost. His earlier bravado had been replaced by a mix of dread and disbelief. He kept glancing at Alicia and her famous companion, his expression shifting between panic and forced neutrality. At one point, the celebrity leaned in slightly, lowering their voice. "So, really, what's going on here? You seem sharper than usual." Alicia's smile didn't falter. "Let's just say the manager and I had a little misunderstanding about my reservation. But don't worry, I think it's been handled." The celebrity raised an eyebrow, their gaze flickering briefly toward Michael. "Misunderstanding? He looks like he's about to pass out." Alicia chuckled softly. "I'm sure he's just having an off night." Their conversation continued, light and unbothered, as they enjoyed their meals. Alicia noted the subtle shift in the staff's behavior. They were attentive, almost excessively so, as though trying to make up for the earlier debacle. Every glass was refilled the moment it neared empty, and each course was delivered with precision and care. By the time they finished, the restaurant had settled back into a semblance of normalcy, though the undercurrent of tension remained. The celebrities stood and adjusted their jacket, flashing a grin. "Well," they said, "this was fun. Let's not wait so long to catch up next time." "Agreed," Alicia replied, standing as well. As they made their way to the exit, the celebrity paused, glancing briefly toward Michael. Their gaze was cool, unimpressed. "Nice place," they said flatly, before stepping outside with Alicia. Michael didn't respond. He remained frozen near the back of the room, his face a portrait of quiet desperation as the weight of the situation finally began to settle in. The next morning, Alicia arrived at the restaurant with James Lawson at her side. The golden morning light spilled through the windows, illuminating the polished floors and empty dining tables. The restaurant was quiet, a stark contrast to the tension that lingered in the air. Michael Turner sat at a corner table, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. His eyes darted to Alicia as she walked in, but he quickly looked away, his posture tense. "Michael," James began, his voice calm but authoritative, "thank you for coming in early. We need to have a serious conversation about last night." Michael stood as they approached, forcing a nervous smile. "Mr. Lawson, Ms. Carter, I just want to start by saying how sorry I am. I realize I made a terrible mistake, and I want to apologize to both of you." James gestured for them all to sit, his expression more thoughtful than angry. "Mistakes happen, Michael," he said evenly, "but I need to understand what happened and why. Alicia is a valued guest, and her experience last night was unacceptable." Michael's smile wavered, but he nodded quickly. "I take full responsibility, sir. I let the pressure of the evening get to me. With the celebrity arriving, I just panicked. I didn't mean anything by it." Alicia's eyebrows rose, but she remained quiet, letting James lead the conversation for now. "Panic is one thing," James said, his tone measured, "but the words you used, fitting the ambiance, that doesn't sound like panic, Michael. That sounds personal." Michael's face reddened. "I didn't mean it like that," he said hastily. "It was poor phrasing. I swear it won't happen again." James leaned back, considering him carefully. "You've been with us a long time, Michael. This is the first time I've had to address something like this with you. Is it really just a one-time lapse in judgment?" Alicia's gaze hardened. "You believe that, James?" James turned to her, his expression conflicted. "Everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt, Alicia. If this was an isolated incident, it wasn't," she interrupted firmly. Michael's head snapped toward her. "That's not true," he blurted out, but his voice lacked conviction. Alicia ignored him, her focus on James. "This isn't about one bad night. This is about a pattern of behavior that you've ignored because you weren't here to see it." James frowned, shifting in his chair. "What are you suggesting?" "That this isn't the first time Michael's treated someone like this," Alicia said. "I'll bet if we talk to your staff, we'll hear more stories. And if we reach out to customers, we'll hear even more." Michael looked at her, panic flashing across his face. "You don't have any proof," he said quickly. Alicia's eyes narrowed. "Not yet, but I will." James rubbed his temple, clearly torn. "Michael's been with us for years, Alicia. I've never had a reason to doubt his professionalism before." "That's because people like him know how to hide it," Alicia said coldly. "They don't show their true colors to someone they need to impress. They save it for people they think won't fight back." Michael shifted uncomfortably, his hands tightening into fists. "That's not fair," he muttered. "Fair?" Alicia shot back. "You want to talk about fair, Michael? How fair is it to humiliate paying customers because they don't fit your idea of what this place should look like?" James held up a hand, his voice firm. "Enough. Let's not turn this into a shouting match." He turned back to Alicia, his expression serious. "If you believe there's more to this, I'm willing to investigate. But I need more than accusations. I need facts." "You'll have them," Alicia said confidently. James nodded slowly. "All right. Michael, I'm placing you on probation while we look into this. You'll stay away from the restaurant until we get to the bottom of it." Michael looked like he wanted to protest, but he thought better of it. "Yes, sir," he said quietly. James turned back to Alicia. If there's a pattern, we'll find it. But until then, I'd appreciate it if we handled this discreetly. Alicia's smile was tight. Of course, James. Discretion is my specialty. Later that morning, Alicia began her investigation with the restaurant staff. She knew they would have seen Michael's behavior up close and might hold the key to uncovering a pattern. Her first stop was the kitchen, where the head chef was orchestrating preparations for the lunch service. "Excuse me," Alicia said, stepping into the bustling space. The head chef, a stout man with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, turned toward her. "Ms. Carter," he greeted, setting down a ladle. "I heard about what happened last night. That shouldn't have happened to anyone." "Thank you," Alicia replied. "I need your help. I'm trying to understand if last night was an isolated incident or part of something bigger. Has Michael ever treated other customers the same way?" The chef's face tightened. He glanced around to ensure no one else was listening. "I've seen things," he said cautiously, "but it's not something I've been asked about before." "Please," Alicia said earnestly. "If he's been targeting people, I need to know. This isn't just about me. It's about everyone he's hurt." The chef exhaled deeply, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but Michael's been picky about who gets the best seats for years. I've overheard him tell the host to steer certain folks away, mostly people who don't fit his idea of classy." Alicia frowned. "And no one's reported this?" "Not officially," the chef admitted. "But it's not just customers. Some of the staff have left because of him. He plays favorites and makes it hard for people he doesn't like to get ahead." "Anyone specific?" The chef hesitated. "There was a young waiter a while back. Great kid, worked hard. But Michael kept passing him over for promotions, always finding some excuse. Eventually, the guy quit." Alicia nodded, thanking him for his honesty before moving on. Over the next few hours, she spoke with other employees in private. The picture became clearer with every conversation. One server described being told to seat minority diners near the kitchen or bar, away from prime spots in the dining room. A former hostess admitted Michael had pressured her to steer undesirable customers away from the windows. The same phrases came up repeatedly. Ambiance, class. Doesn't fit the vibe. By midday, Alicia had gathered enough testimonies to confirm her suspicions. But she knew it wasn't enough to bring to James just yet. Customers might hold the missing pieces, and she needed to hear their stories, too. That afternoon, Alicia met James in his office at the restaurant. He looked up from his desk as she entered, his expression grave. "Find anything?" he asked. "Plenty," Alicia replied, setting a folder of notes on his desk. "I spoke with the staff. Almost everyone had a story about Michael. He's been using his position to discriminate against both employees and customers." James opened the folder, scanning the pages. His brow furrowed as he read. "This is worse than I imagined," he muttered. "It's a pattern, James," Alicia said firmly. "And it's gone unchecked for years. He's created a toxic culture. And you didn't even see it happening." James sighed, leaning back in his chair. "You're right. I trusted Michael to run this place. And now it's clear I made a mistake. Now that you know, you can fix it," Alicia said, her tone softening. "But we need more than just this." James looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "The staff's stories are important, but customers have been impacted too," Alicia explained. "We need to talk to them. I'm willing to bet there are people out there with stories about how Michael treated them." James rubbed his temple, visibly grappling with the weight of the revelations. "Do you think people will come forward?" "They will," Alicia said confidently. "But we have to ask. Let's start with recent diners. Your reservation system should have contact information for at least some of them." James nodded slowly. "I'll have someone pull the records. And if what you're saying is true, I'll make this right." "Michael's done, Alicia. I promise you that." Alicia leaned forward, her gaze steady. "It's not just about firing him, James. It's about showing your staff and your customers that this place can be better, that you won't let this happen again." James reached out to shake her hand. "I'll do everything I can." Alicia took his hand, a faint smile crossing her face. "Good, let's get to work." The day stretched long as Alicia poured herself into the next stage of her investigation, speaking with customers. She sat at a small desk in James's office, surrounded by stacks of reservation logs and notes, while James's assistant helped sort contact details for patrons who had dined at the restaurant in recent months. Her first call was to a young black couple, Camille and Brian, who had dined at the restaurant 3 weeks prior. As Alicia introduced herself and explained the purpose of her inquiry, she heard Camille hesitate on the other end of the line. "Well, now that you mention it," Camille began, her tone cautious, "we did feel a bit out of place. The hostess seemed nervous when she seated us, and we ended up at a table in the back near the kitchen. It was odd, because I saw open tables with better views when we walked in." "Did you say anything at the time?" Alicia asked gently. "We tried," Camille replied, "but the manager, Michael, I think his name was, he just said those tables were reserved and walked away before we could press further. It didn't feel right, but we didn't want to make a scene." Alicia frowned, noting the familiar pattern. "Thank you for sharing. It's important for us to hear your experience." Her next call was to Mr. Harris, a black businessman who had dined alone. When Alicia reached him, he chuckled ruefully. "I remember that night," he said. "I made a reservation for a window table, but when I arrived, I was seated in a corner near the bar instead. When I asked about it, the manager said they had a last-minute booking that needed the spot." "Did you see who was seated at the table you reserved?" Alicia asked. "I did," Mr. Harris replied. "It was a white couple who arrived after me. They didn't look like they had a reservation, but Michael greeted them personally, so I figured they must have been VIPs. Alicia's pen paused over her notepad. "And how did that make you feel?" "Dismissed," Harris said simply. "Like I wasn't worth the effort. It's not the first time I've experienced something like this, but it still stings." Call after call, Alicia heard variations of the same story, all from black patrons. A pair of sisters described being given the smallest table in the house, despite arriving early for their reservation. A young professional shared how Michael had barely acknowledged her presence when she asked for assistance with her meal. Another couple, who had since stopped visiting the restaurant, revealed they had felt unwelcome on more than one occasion. What stood out most was the shared frustration in their voices, not just about the treatment itself, but about the subtlety of it. Michael's behavior had been just polite enough to avoid outright confrontation, but dismissive enough to leave them feeling unwelcome. By late afternoon, Alicia had compiled a growing stack of notes. Her stomach churned with a mix of frustration and vindication as the stories piled up. The picture was unmistakable. Michael's discriminatory behavior had affected countless black patrons, many of whom had quietly decided to take their business elsewhere. That evening, Alicia returned to James's office to share her findings. He was on the phone when she arrived, his voice low and serious. As he hung up, he gestured for her to take a seat. "How did it go?" he asked, his expression tired but curious. "Exactly how I expected," Alicia replied, placing her notebook on his desk. "I spoke with 6 black customers today, and all of them described being treated unfairly by Michael. He's been systematically prioritizing white patrons while dismissing black diners." James frowned, flipping through the notes. "I didn't realize it was this bad," he muttered. "It's worse than bad, James," Alicia said firmly. "These are just the people I was able to reach today. Imagine how many others had similar experiences, but never said anything." James leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "What bothers me most is how subtle it's been. I've dined here dozens of times and never noticed. How does someone get away with this for so long?" "Because people like Michael know how to cover their tracks," Alicia said. "He uses just enough plausible deniability to avoid outright confrontation, but it's clear he's been doing this for years." James sighed heavily, staring at the notes on his desk. "What did the customers say when you told them why you were calling?" "They appreciated it," Alicia replied. "Most of them had written it off as bad luck or poor service, but when I explained the bigger picture, they understood. Some even said they'd come back if things changed." James nodded slowly. "That's something, at least. But this isn't just about winning back customers, Alicia continued. This is about accountability. Michael created a culture of exclusion here, and it hurt both your patrons and your employees. That needs to change. James met her gaze, his expression resolute. You're right. We need to fix this. Not just fire Michael and move on, but make sure it never happens again. Alicia nodded, satisfied. Then let's start with transparency. We need to reach out to more customers, hear their stories, and let them know we're taking this seriously. James straightened in his chair. I'll make sure my team is ready. We'll pull more records and start contacting patrons tomorrow. And you'll hold a staff meeting? Alicia pressed. They need to hear what's happening and what's going to change. Absolutely, James said. This restaurant will be better, Alicia. I promise you that. The next morning, the restaurant buzzed with a different kind of energy. James had called for an all-staff meeting before the doors opened, filling the dining area with murmurs of curiosity and unease. Servers, cooks, hosts, and cleaners stood in clusters, exchanging whispers about the sudden announcement. Alicia arrived early, taking a seat near the front alongside James. She had spent the evening reviewing her findings and was ready to present them. Her calm demeanor masked the fire she felt inside. This was the moment where the truth needed to come to light. When everyone had gathered, James stepped forward, his face set with determination. He raised a hand, and the room fell silent. Thank you all for being here, he began. As you've probably guessed, this meeting isn't part of our usual routine. I called you here because something serious has come to my attention. Something that affects every single one of you, as well as our customers. The staff exchanged puzzled looks, a few shifting uncomfortably as James continued. For years, this restaurant has prided itself on being a place where everyone feels welcome, James said. But recently, I've learned that hasn't always been the case. There have been instances, far too many, of guests being treated unfairly, and I take full responsibility for allowing it to happen. Alicia noted the surprised glances exchanged among the staff. It was clear many hadn't expected such an admission from their boss. James gestured toward her. Alicia Carter has been working with me to investigate these issues. She's spoken with customers and staff, and what she's uncovered is troubling. I'll let her explain. Alicia rose, her calm gaze sweeping across the room. Thank you, James, she said, stepping forward. Over the past few days, I've spoken to staff members and several customers who've dined here. What I've found is a clear pattern of discrimination, specifically against black customers. The room went still. Some staff members looked down at their shoes, while others stared at Alicia with wide eyes. For years, certain guests have been treated as second class, Alicia continued. They've been seated in undesirable areas, ignored by management, or even turned away under false pretenses. And all of this was done under the guise of maintaining ambiance. A ripple of unease spread through the crowd. A few employees nodded subtly, as though confirming what they'd suspected but hadn't dared to voice. This behavior wasn't random, Alicia said firmly. It was orchestrated by Michael Turner, who used his position to enforce his own biases. A gasp broke the silence, followed by a wave of murmurs. All eyes turned toward Michael, who stood near the back of the room, his face flushed and his jaw clenched. This is outrageous, Michael snapped, stepping forward. You can't just accuse me of something like that without proof. Alicia didn't flinch. I have proof, she said, her voice steady. I've documented testimonies from multiple customers and staff members, all of whom have shared consistent stories about your behavior. Would you like me to read them aloud? Michael's face turned a deeper shade of red. He opened his mouth to respond, but faltered, glancing around the room. The staff's expressions ranged from anger to disappointment, and it was clear his usual bravado wouldn't save him this time. I made decisions based on what was best for the restaurant, Michael said defensively. That's my job as a manager. Your job, Alicia shot back, was to treat every guest with respect and fairness. Instead, you used your authority to marginalize people who didn't fit your personal vision of ambiance. James stepped forward, his tone sharper now. Michael, This isn't just about one or two incidents. This is a pattern. One that has hurt our customers, damaged our reputation, and betrayed the values this restaurant was built on. Michael looked to James, desperation creeping into his voice. Sir, I've been loyal to this place for years. I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. Please, let me fix this. James's expression hardened. You had years to fix it, Michael. Instead, you doubled down. Effective immediately. Your employment here is terminated. The room was silent as the weight of James's words sank in. Michael stood frozen, his mouth opening as though to protest. But no sound came out. James turned back to the group. I owe all of you an apology, he said. I let this happen by not paying closer attention. That changes now. Starting today, we're implementing mandatory training on equity and inclusion, and I'm putting measures in place to ensure no one is ever treated unfairly again. Customers or staff. Alicia watched as the staff absorbed his words, some nodding while others whispered quietly. She felt a small flicker of hope. It was a step, and though there was still work to be done, it was a start. As the staff dispersed after the meeting, James gestured for Alicia to follow him back to his office. The weight of the morning's revelations hung heavily in the air, but Alicia's focus remained sharp. Michael had been conspicuously silent during the staff meeting, and she suspected his absence from the confrontation center had more to do with fear than remorse. He's waiting in my office, James said quietly as they walked. I wanted to give him one last chance to explain himself. To be honest, I'm not sure what good it'll do, but I need to hear it. Alicia nodded. He's not going to admit anything unless he feels cornered. And even then, it won't be the whole truth. Then we'll corner him, James replied firmly, opening the door to his office. Michael was already seated at the far end of the room, his posture rigid and defensive. His usually polished appearance was marred by a slightly disheveled suit and a sheen of nervous sweat. He looked up as they entered, his eyes darting from James to Alicia. But he didn't speak. James took his seat behind the desk, gesturing for Alicia to sit beside him. The room felt smaller with the three of them inside, the tension palpable. Michael, James began, his voice steady but firm. I called you here because I want to understand what happened. This meeting isn't about saving your job. That decision has already been made. This is about accountability. Michael shifted uncomfortably, his fingers clutching the armrests of his chair. I don't know what to say, he stammered. I made mistakes. I let the pressure get to me. Alicia's expression was cold as she leaned forward, her arms folded across her chest. Mistakes? She repeated, her voice sharp. Is that what you call years of targeting black customers and treating them as less than? You didn't just let the pressure get to you, Michael. You built a system that excluded people based on their race. Michael flinched, his face reddening as he avoided her gaze. It wasn't about race, he said defensively. I was just trying to maintain the restaurant's image. Stop, James interrupted, his tone cutting. We've heard that excuse before. It's meaningless. Explain what you really meant by maintaining the image. Who did you think didn't belong? Michael hesitated, his eyes falling to the floor. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders sagging. Fine, he muttered. Yes, I focused on certain customers, white customers. They were the ones who fit the look of the place, the ones who brought in other high-paying clientele. I thought I was doing what was best for the business. Alicia leaned forward, her voice icy. So you're admitting that you treated black customers differently because you didn't think they fit your look. Do you even hear yourself? Michael looked up, his face pale. It wasn't personal, he said weakly. It was about the bottom line. Do you realize how disgusting that sounds? Alicia shot back. You weren't just managing a restaurant. You were telling people, over and over again, that they didn't belong. And now you want to hide behind excuses like the bottom line? James sat back, his expression grim. Michael, you've betrayed everything this restaurant stands for. I trusted you to uphold our values, and you turned them into a mockery. Michael's voice cracked as he tried to defend himself. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I was helping the restaurant. You thought wrong, James interrupted, his voice rising. You hurt people, Michael, not just customers, but staff who had to carry out your orders, who had to watch you tear down others just because they didn't look the part. And now, you're sitting here acting like this was some kind of business strategy? It's disgusting. Michael's head dropped into his hands. For a moment, the room was silent, save for his ragged breaths. I don't know what to say, he murmured. Start with the truth, Alicia said firmly. You owe that to every person you dismissed, every person you ignored, and every person you demeaned. Admit what you did, and take responsibility for it. Michael looked up, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. I targeted black customers because I thought they wouldn't complain, he admitted finally. I thought if I focused on the high-profile white clients, it would make the restaurant look better. I didn't think anyone would notice. Well, they noticed, James said coldly. And now, you'll face the consequences. Michael nodded weakly, his defiance extinguished. I understand, he whispered. James stood, signaling the end of the meeting. You'll never work here or in this industry again, Michael. Leave your keys and go. Michael rose shakily, casting one last glance at Alicia before shuffling out of the room. When the door closed behind him, James turned to Alicia, his face a mixture of anger and regret. You were right, he said quietly. All of it. And now it's time to fix it, Alicia replied. The afternoon sun filtered through the large windows of James's office, casting warm light on the polished wood of his desk. Alicia sat across from him, her notes laid out neatly in front of her. The tension from the earlier confrontation with Michael had dissipated, replaced by a sense of determination. James leaned back in his chair, his hands steepled in front of him. Alicia, he began, his tone contemplative, this place has been my pride and joy for years. I thought I was building something special, a space where everyone could feel welcome. And now, I'm realizing I failed to see what was happening right under my nose. Alicia studied him for a moment, her expression calm but resolute. The important thing is that you see it now, she said. But acknowledging the problem is just the first step. What you do next will define whether this restaurant becomes what you envisioned or continues to reflect Michael's influence. James nodded. I've been thinking about that. Transparency is key. I need to be upfront with my staff and customers about what happened and what we're doing to fix it. But I don't want to stop there. I want real, systemic change. Good, Alicia said, leaning forward, because that's exactly what it's going to take. Michael wasn't the only problem. He created a culture that allowed discrimination to thrive. But that culture didn't happen in a vacuum. If you're serious about change, you need to rebuild from the ground up. James rubbed his temples, visibly grappling with the weight of her words. Where do we start? Start with your staff, Alicia said. Hold a training session on equity and inclusion. Not a box-checking exercise, but something meaningful. Bring in experts who can help your employees recognize and challenge biases, both their own and others. James nodded slowly, jotting down notes. What else? You need a system for accountability, Alicia continued. Anonymous reporting channels, regular staff reviews, and oversight to ensure that no one else abuses their position the way Michael did. And that includes you, James. You need to be more present. James sighed heavily, his guilt evident. You're right. I've been too hands-off. I trusted Michael to run things, and that trust was misplaced. Trust is important, Alicia said, but so is oversight. You can delegate authority, but you can't delegate accountability. James leaned forward, his expression resolute. What about our customers? How do I rebuild their trust? Alicia's gaze softened slightly. Start by apologizing. Reach out to the customers who were directly affected by Michael's actions. Offer them not just refunds, but a genuine acknowledgement of what happened and how you're making it right. And what about the public? James asked. If word gets out about this, it could ruin our reputation. James, Alicia said firmly, the truth is going to come out. whether you control the narrative or not. It's better to get ahead of it. Issue a statement explaining what happened, what you're doing to address it, and your commitment to creating a more inclusive environment. Own your mistakes and show people you're serious about change. James nodded, his shoulders squaring as resolve took hold. I'll do it. All of it. And I'd like you to be involved in the process, Alicia. Your insight has been invaluable, and I think you could help guide us through this transition. Alicia smiled faintly. I appreciate that, James, but my role here was to bring the truth to light. The real work is yours to do. That being said, I'm willing to consult in the short term to help you get started. That's more than I could ask for, James said sincerely. Alicia glanced at her notes, then looked back at him. One more thing. You should consider donating a portion of the restaurant's profits to organizations that support equity and inclusion. It's not a solution, but it's a step toward making amends. James nodded thoughtfully. I'll make it happen. The two sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling between them. Finally, James extended his hand. Thank you, Alicia, he said, for everything. You didn't have to do any of this, but you chose to stay and help us fix what's broken. That means more than I can say. Alicia shook his hand firmly. I did it because it was the right thing to do. For the customers, the staff, and for everyone who deserves better. Now it's up to you to follow through. James nodded, determination etched on his face. I will. I won't let this place fall back into the same patterns. Alicia gathered her notes and stood, offering him a small smile. Good. Then we'll see where this goes. As she left the office, Alicia felt a sense of closure, but also a quiet resolve. The fight against discrimination was far from over. But this victory, small as it might seem, was a step in the right direction. Months later, Alicia stepped through the doors of the restaurant, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor. The atmosphere was vibrant, alive with the hum of conversation and the soft clinking of glasses and cutlery. She paused for a moment, taking in the sight that greeted her. The changes were subtle yet profound, a space that now radiated warmth and inclusivity. The host, a young black man with a friendly smile, greeted her as she approached the stand. Welcome to Lawson's, he said warmly. Do you have a reservation? I do, Alicia replied, giving her name. He checked the list and nodded. Right this way, Ms. Carter. As she followed him through the dining area, Alicia couldn't help but notice the clientele. Black families and couples occupied prime tables, their laughter and conversations blending seamlessly into the ambiance. At one corner, a group of black professionals appeared to be celebrating, raising their glasses in a toast. Her eyes were drawn to a larger table near the window, where a well-known black celebrity sat surrounded by friends. She smiled faintly, recognizing the actor from a recent blockbuster. They appeared completely at ease, the room treating them as just another part of its fabric rather than a spectacle. When the host led her to her table, Alicia found James already seated, rising as she approached. He extended a hand, his smile genuine. Alicia, it's good to see you. You too, James, she replied, shaking his hand before taking her seat. He gestured around the room. What do you think? Alicia took a moment before responding, her gaze sweeping across the restaurant. It's different, she said finally. Better. James chuckled softly. It's been a journey, that's for sure, but we've made progress. Thanks to you. How are the changes holding up? She asked, folding her hands on the table. Stronger than I expected, James said. The staff training sessions went better than I could have hoped. We've also added an oversight committee to handle any concerns that come up, and I've been much more involved day to day. It's made all the difference. And the customers? James's expression brightened. We've seen a real shift in our clientele. People who stopped coming have started to return, and word of mouth has brought in new faces. The restaurant's reputation has improved, but more importantly, people feel welcome here now. Alicia glanced toward the window again, her eyes lingering on the celebrity. It's good to see this place thriving, she said. But more than that, it's good to see it becoming what you always said it should be, a space for everyone. James nodded solemnly. It wasn't easy getting here, Alicia. We had to earn back trust, one step at a time. And I know there's still work to do. But moments like this, he gestured to the room around them, they remind me why we did it. As their conversation continued, a server approached to take their orders. The young woman, smiling and attentive, treated Alicia with the same warmth and professionalism she extended to every table. Alicia couldn't help but feel a quiet satisfaction, proof that the culture had genuinely changed. When their meals arrived, James raised his glass. "To you, Alicia," he said, "for holding me accountable, for pushing me to be better, and for showing me what I couldn't see on my own. I'll always be grateful." Alicia raised her glass, a small smile tugging at her lips. "To progress," she said simply, "and to making sure it sticks." They clinked glasses, and for a moment, the weight of the past months lifted. As Alicia dined, she observed the room with a sense of quiet pride. This was no longer just a restaurant. It was a testament to the power of accountability and the possibility of change. The journey wasn't over, but today was proof that even the smallest victories could lead to something greater. When she finally left, stepping into the cool evening air, Alicia glanced back at the glowing windows of the restaurant. She thought of the people inside, the staff, the customers, the community they were building, and felt a renewed sense of purpose. Change was never easy, but it was always worth fighting for. The evening air was crisp as Alicia walked to her car, the lights from the restaurant glowing softly behind her. The visit had given her a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed. Yet, as she unlocked her car door, her thoughts lingered on the journey it had taken to get here. Alicia paused, leaning against the car for a moment, staring back at the restaurant. Months ago, it had been a symbol of exclusion, a place where people like her were made to feel invisible. Now, it was something entirely different, a beacon of change, however small. She climbed into the car, the soft hum of the engine breaking the quiet as she drove through the bustling city streets. The memories of everything that had happened replayed in her mind. The confrontation with Michael, the interviews with staff and customers, the endless conversations with James about what real accountability looked like. It had been exhausting, frustrating, and at times disheartening. But it had also been worth it. The following week, Alicia found herself sitting in a modest office in the heart of the city. The walls were lined with books on equity and leadership, the desk covered in neatly organized files. Across from her sat an older black woman with a warm smile and a sharp gaze. "I heard about the changes at Lawson's," the woman said, leaning back in her chair. "You've done some remarkable work there." Alicia smiled faintly. "It wasn't just me. James was willing to listen and act. That made all the difference." The woman nodded thoughtfully. "It's rare to find someone in his position willing to take full responsibility. But it sounds like you gave him little choice." Alicia chuckled softly. "I suppose I can be persuasive when I need to be." The woman's smile widened. "We need more of that. There are plenty of places out there like Lawson's before the change. Places where bias hides behind smiles and excuses. Have you thought about continuing this work? Consulting, maybe?" Alicia hesitated. The idea had crossed her mind before, but she hadn't given it serious consideration. "I've thought about it," she admitted, "but I'm not sure if I'm ready to take it on full-time." "Well," the woman said, leaning forward, "if you ever are, give me a call. There's always room for someone with your determination and insight." Alicia took the offered business card, slipping it into her bag. "Thank you. I'll keep that in mind." Later that evening, Alicia sat in her apartment, a steaming cup of tea in her hands. The city lights twinkled outside her window, casting faint shadows on the walls. Her mind wandered back to the restaurant, to James, to the staff and customers who had come together to make something better. It wasn't perfect. There would always be more to do, more battles to fight. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of peace. Her phone buzzed on the table, the screen lighting up with a text from James. "James, just wanted to thank you again for everything. Couldn't have done it without you. Hope you'll visit again soon." Alicia smiled, setting her cup down to type a response. Alicia, you're welcome. Keep up the good work. Don't let it slide. And I'll definitely be back. She set the phone aside, her smile lingering as she leaned back against the couch. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of closure, not just for herself, but for everyone who had walked into Lawson's and left feeling less than they deserved. Change was slow, and sometimes painful, but today it felt just a little bit closer. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.